Hi, I'm Marc. And my analytics tell me that I've been doing art longer than most of you have been alive. So it got me thinking. In this episode of YouTube Art School, I wanted to share with you the biggest mistakes that I've made as an artist, stuff that I feel hurts me the most in unintended ways, hoping that this helps some of you, even just one, avoid the same mistakes. I want the best for you. Also, for the last 2 weeks, I've been working on a new painting, so I'll be playing the time-lapse of that in the background while I talk. This way, the video has something for you, even if you don't care about what I have to say. Wow. Uh-oh. Class is starting. All right, class is in session. Pay attention. So right before I start with the first of 4 mistakes, just a few words about what you're gonna see back there. This is a painting that I went into without a clear idea, so the process ended up taking way longer than usual, but I still managed to put something together in the end, I think. I have about 15 hours of recording, so that's technically how long it took, but I can tell you probably another 10 hours was just me staring at it, trying to come up with ideas to make it work. So it felt like it took way longer than just 15. And this little anecdote is actually the perfect segue into my first big mistake on the list. Not using a method when I work. Now, I'll say that I never do this anymore, except for that rare example playing in the background here. But at the end of my journey as an artist, I didn't really realize there were methods to doing things in art. Or rather, I figured whatever I was doing was my method. And that was probably good enough. I was getting likes on DeviantArt, rest in peace. So I thought I was pretty clever. Heck, I even got hired as a game developer, so I thought I had figured it out. But then as I started to work, surrounded by insane artists, learning all sorts of different methods to get things done faster, more efficiently, everything that I learned on the job and then later refined as I started teaching, all of that changed everything. It made me realize just how inefficiently I had been working and just the incredible amount of time that I had wasted. And now I usually follow any of the various methods that I've shown on the channel, depending on the situation. And honestly, it shaved the time that it takes me to make the same quality of art in more than a half, just over a few short years of doing it. It's really incredible the amount of time that you waste not following a method. When you use one, you'll always know what to do next, in what order. It just removes a lot of the trial and error that often comes with art, and you can actually get better at using certain methods if you keep reusing the same ones, increasing your speed and efficiency even further. Not using a strict one for the painting in the background really made that painfully obvious again. And this was a mistake that likely cost me hundreds, if not thousands of hours over a few decades. So it is a big one, but the rest is going to be increasingly worse. So let's move on to the second big mistake. There is such a thing as learning too much theory as an artist. And that might be for a reason that's a bit counterintuitive, but it's a mistake that I only really understood a few years into teaching art. The issue is actually when the quantity of the theory isn't followed by an equivalent quantity of hands-on practice. So what happens to me when I focus too much on teaching and less on my personal art is that I get really good at the theory, really good at spotting students' issues and helping them correct them. And I've done this so much over the last few years that I clearly noticed a nasty side effect that comes with doing that, which is that when I go back to my own art, and this is actually something I wanted to talk about for a long time, I just never knew how really to approach it. But when I go back to my own art, I see it with this new improved critical eye that I get from teaching so many students, but my practical skills haven't improved as fast in the meantime. I usually practice drawing on a regular basis anyways, just because I love it. But the many times when my own practice slowed down in favor of teaching or just studying too much for too long, like when I was building my art program, I realized that nothing I was drawing was good enough anymore. Did I get worse? Oh, it kind of felt that way, but of course not. But even knowing that in the back of my mind, it still wasn't a good feeling. It makes everything harder to complete. And of course, you don't need to be a teacher for this to happen. It's the same as someone watching too many tutorials, reading too many books, but without actually practicing. The knowledge helps you get better, of course, but without the practice, it becomes harder to feel good about practicing. And then you practice less and less and less. It's a simple balance that's really easy to get wrong. At least it's been for me. So keep that in mind maybe. Theory and practice should come together for it to work in your favor. So now, anyways, what do I do to fix my own imbalance? Well, good question. I'll usually focus on a single skill, like drawing faces, for example, and then work on practicing that exclusively until I feel like my practical skills are evenly matched with my theory knowledge, when the balance is kind of restored. And it's easy to know when that's the case because I'll just start to feel good about my art again. As weird as that might sound. If your critical eye is like way beyond your practical skills, all the mistakes just jump at you and it's much harder to feel happy with what you produce. So in that sense, a little bit of ignorance helps sometimes. So keep an eye on your own balance and it'll save you many hours of frustrations, feeling bad about your art, demotivated, all that kind of crap that not only affects your art but affects other parts in your life. And before I move on to the next mistake, I have something that might help you if you've been struggling with your art. Over the last few years, I built a complete art education program for artists of all skill levels. As you know, if you've been a subscriber, it comes with assignments and a study guide to take your hand through all of the content and give the best possible structure to your studies, week by week. We also have a private Discord server for students to hang out and level up together. And until the end of the month only, the summer sale is back. So you'll be able to grab the program at a massive discount. Check the link in the video description for all of the deets. I know you'll be glad you did. Now, the last two mistakes will go a little bit quicker, but they actually had the biggest impact on me and my art overall. And so jumping into the first one right away, not taking care of my health for like, let's say certain stretches of time. We often hear that exercise and a good diet are great at helping us regulate our hormones, and that of course has all sorts of consequences on everything else that we do, including, of course, art. I've typically been in pretty good shape most of my life, so for the few times that I wasn't, it was very obvious that I didn't feel nearly as motivated to draw. I felt tired way faster, so I couldn't keep my focus for as long. My thoughts would get a little darker, my expectations would lower, and I just found it much harder to stay positive overall. The difference was so obvious in retrospect, but it was just harder to bounce back in the moment. I would blame it on different things, like you know how it is. Of course, I'm not saying everyone is like that though, but I'm sure that I'm not the only one. Because when I'm healthy, everything else gets way better. I feel good with myself, I feel good with my art, so it's just a big mistake to not realize to what extent my physical health impacted my mental health. Like, I knew in theory from reading about it or watching documentaries, but I didn't know just how worse everything could get when hormones, get out of whack. So hit the gym maybe, put that cupcake away. Anyways, finally, the last mistake that I only really was able to notice in retrospect again, after doing this for so long, and maybe it's strange to be saying this as an artist, but sometimes not drawing is kind of the best idea. We're told often, that practice makes perfect as we grow up. So maybe it makes sense to be forcing myself to draw even when I don't feel like it, but it's almost always a big mistake. It's basically like anything else in our life that we're forced to do. It almost always shifts from being fun, if it was initially, to inevitably becoming a chore. I guess our brains don't like chores, so quickly enough that starts to become what you associate with art, something that you don't like, and then you fall off. I went through many of those phases in my career where I just didn't feel like doing art, yet still I powered through thinking that I had to keep the creative flame alive, which I still definitely believe in, by the way, but forcing myself to draw just turned it into an activity that I didn't enjoy anymore, and then in the end, of course, it just did what I was trying to avoid and forced me into taking some time off by just burning out completely. Not something I recommend. But saying that, personally, when I don't draw for a while, I do feel less and less motivated to draw, almost as if I forget how fun it is when I don't do it. So forcing myself, not working. Just stopping to draw, also not working. Now what? Well, my solution is actually super simple, and the idea is just to stay creative. Not to stay drawing, not to keep drawing, just to keep doing creative things. So if I don't feel like drawing, I'll do something else that keeps my creativity at peak levels, like playing with clay, or like building something, or renovating something around the house even. Cooking too, I really like that. Anything where I get to create with my hands really, and that's how I've avoided burnout for years now, while keeping my passion and motivation strong. So all of these mistakes that I talked about, I think we probably all make at some point, but hopefully this will help you recognize what you're doing wrong, maybe, and help with a solution, maybe. We need to make mistakes to learn for sure, but we can also learn from the mistakes of others. So learn from mine and profit. And if you have any other mistakes that you think are worth sharing with others, please do so in the comments. You never know, it might help out a bro. And I hope you enjoyed the mess in the background there. I think it kind of turned out all right. And you can also download my free brush pack with the link in the video description. It's got over 500,000 downloads at this point. It seems like people like them, and you might too. And of course, make sure you have your notifications enabled to be on time for next week's class.